to Day 2, Segment 3 of our Forum Keynote Series, the finale of what's been a full summer and fall of Forum Live and on-demand episodes, exploring digital transformation of the enterprise. Over the past 4 months and a dozen sessions, we've explored topics such as AI and ethical data in healthcare, the evolving landscape of fintech, and the acceleration of digital transformation catalyzed by the COVID pandemic. Remember that you can go back and explore recordings of all our Forum series content via our Forum community app, available on both your desktop and mobile device. Contact Danielle Pinto from the PACT team via our website at philadelphiapact.com. Today, we bring you our final thematic session of the Forum Conference, a look at the ethical use of data and AI. Plus, we'll have our closing panel, a conversation with enterprise thought leaders about how we can all work together to build the diverse tech workforce of the future. And make sure to stick around till the final minutes of our 1-hour broadcast for the announcement of our Forum Demo Pit Best in Show winner. Plus, at the end of the hour, we'll gather in our virtual networking lounge for 30 additional minutes of informal networking with fellow attendees, our demo pit companies, and our showcase sponsors. Link to that site is posted in the YouTube notes and live chat. Now, first up, let's get to that final thematic session.
Hello, my name is Jamel Dixon, IT Workforce Manager at Vanguard. As Dean mentioned, our final thematic panel of this year's conference will highlight the ethical use of data and AI technology in the enterprise. Our panelists will discuss how including ethical and humane considerations upfront in the development of AI initiatives can improve acceptance, adoption, and value of new technology, as well as avoiding embarrassing and costly missteps. A reminder that the format for our thematic sessions includes a few brief lightning talks from individual panelists, followed by a short moderated Q&A with the panel. So now, let's hear from our first panelist.
Hello, my name is Rachel Lubavitsky. I'm the CEO of Everything Benefits. I'm happy to be on the panel today. Everything Benefits is a benefits technology company that supports over 10,000 employers with streamlined and automated benefits experiences. We use artificial intelligence to help employees make better decisions about their benefit selections. An AI engine reviews claims made by millions of Americans and then provides recommendations to our clients' employees based on the choices made by people like them. While it's exciting to see so many new developments and capabilities of AI in healthcare, it's important to be aware of some of the ethical considerations for the use of AI in order to realize its limitations and mitigate for some of the risks associated with it. AI is helping to take just about every aspect of healthcare to the next level with better diagnosis and custom patient care. It's also modernizing some of the benefits management with faster claims processing and procedure approval. AI is helping doctors and patients to engage together in more meaningful ways. However, usage of AI also brings up some concerns, including the loss of privacy, lack of respect for clients, for the patient's preferences, and data safety risks. Regulation continues to lag behind technological advances, raising questions about accountability and controls in an event AI goes in the wrong direction, as we had seen some instances of. To mitigate for those risks, it's important to educate everybody who is affected by AI about its limitations, and also to continue to drive forward the dialogue about policy changes. Thank you.
This is going to be a 3-minute overview of a book that I've written with my good friend and colleague Michael Kearns called The Ethical Algorithm. And so the starting point for our book is, I think, a familiar premise, which is that as we have started using machine learning in increasingly consequential domains, things like lending and hiring and criminal justice, we have started to see behaviors that if they were carried out by human beings, we would call sexist or racist. And this has been a big topic of the tech media recently. And so the question is, what should we do about that? And how can we use an emerging science to embed ethical norms into the design of our algorithms? Now, a natural question is why it makes sense to think about designing ethical algorithms any more than it makes sense to think about designing ethical hammers. Because after all, algorithms like hammers are human artifacts, and hammers, like other tools, could be used as instruments of violence, but we wouldn't think of that as a failing of the hammer. We'd think of it as a failing of the human wielding the hammer, and we wouldn't feel the need to design ethical hammers. But algorithms, and by algorithms, I really mean models trained by the machine learning pipeline, are different. And they're different for a number of reasons, but one of them is that it's extremely hard to predict what they're going to do. Because unlike traditional applications, nobody is there behind the scenes coding up what a machine learning model is going to do in every application. Instead, you start with data, and you attach to that data a usually pretty narrow objective function, something like a proxy for classification accuracy. And you use an off-the-shelf algorithm like stochastic gradient descent to find a model that optimizes this objective function. And what you get back is something pretty complicated, a vector of 1 billion weights, say, in a modern application. And it's extremely hard to say anything at all about what this model is going to do, except that it's likely pretty good as measured according to the narrow objective function you optimized it for. And so when it goes on to harm somebody or some group of people, it's hard to trace this chain of causality back to the intent of the designer, which is to say, although it is necessary, it is not sufficient for the designers of algorithms to themselves be ethical for the behaviors that they display to be viewed as ethical. And so instead, what we need to do is we need to figure out how to embed social values into algorithms. We need to think about what we really mean when we say that we want an algorithm to be private or fair. And we need to think about this not in sort of the informal way in which we might speak in English, or even the slightly more formal way that a moral philosopher would think about it. We need to think about what we mean with mathematical precision, because we need to embed these constraints into the training procedure. And that's what our book is about. There's an emerging science thinking about how to do it right, but it is non-obvious and subtle. The obvious and naive approaches, for example, forbidding race or features that are correlated with race as an input to your models, doesn't work. But we can talk about what does. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tej Dhawan, and I'm the Chief Data Officer for Principal Financial Group. Principal is headquartered in Des Moines, Iowa, and is a global financial services company with products designed to help our customers save more, protect more, and have more. This purpose serves financial security for all. I have been in this role of Chief Data Officer for a little over 2 years and work within the information technology division of the company. Principal has the honor of being recognized as one of the world's most ethical companies by the Ethisphere Institute. That means that we and our peers excel in promoting ethical business standards, enable employees to make good choices, and shape future industry standards by introducing tomorrow's best practices today. Now, we live those practices through self-reflection and evaluation of our individual disciplines, including information technology. Thinking of information technology, from the earliest computer science classes, we were taught to be biased towards speed and efficiency. The algorithms we learned needed to be quick. Efficient almost was a sign of success. But if we think about our own human behavior and behavior we impart to our algorithms and ultimately to our data, many biases have a way of creeping in. So the topic of today's subject, ethics in artificial intelligence and machine learning, is directly linked to how we as humans, collectively or individually, perform our work. So let's think about our biases that can impact not us humans, not just us humans, but also our algorithms. At Principle, we look at these biases in a construct of 5 different realms. And the first realm is one of familiarity. We are naturally biased toward what is familiar to us, whether it is people who look like us or people who completely don't look like us. By selecting for the familiar, we can naturally bias our own algorithms and the data utilized to serve those algorithms. Similarly, as I mentioned earlier, we have a bias for speed. The bias for speed says that let's get a model deployed because time to market is the winning strategy. However, the bias for speed removes the periphery, and it's in the periphery where nuances lie to make our algorithms better. We also have a bias for the knowledge that we already have. That means that we are likely to focus more on the things we know than the things we don't. Learning the things we don't know takes time, takes energy, takes effort, and a recognition that we don't know something. So to deploy a model based on our own prior knowledge is bound to create problematic outcomes in our algorithms themselves. Another bias is one for the bias for time and space. An event that happened a long time ago is likely to affect us less than an event that just happened to us. But those events that are now fading in memory matter. Luckily, data collection algorithms and data collection schemes make those far off, distant memories as easy to tap as memories of yesterday. But we need to recognize that there are those biases that need to be removed. And then there is the final bias that has been with us throughout humanity, and that is the bias for us to be secure and safe. A bias that challenges us or our own behavior, our own cognition, is likely to impact the data we collect or the algorithms we develop on that data. So if we were to look through some of these biases and manage our algorithms, manage our data collection, and manage our models, we are likely to create better and ultimately more ethical models of execution. I look forward to our conversation. Thanks.
Welcome. I'm Alan Bourne with Fairmount Partners, and we are proud to continue our involvement as a presenting sponsor with Phorum. So you've already heard from our panelists, and now we'll dive a bit deeper into the topic of ethical data and AI. So Tej, I was really interested in your comments on the 5 biases that can affect humans and algorithms. Of the 5 you've laid out, which one do you think has the potential for the greatest impact when we think about ethics and AI?
Thanks, Alan, and thanks all for listening in. The field of artificial intelligence is not just a field of computer science. This is born out of sociology, psychology, and neuroscience. And this particular set of biases I've learned about from the Neuroscience Institute. And the one that stands paramount for me in all of these biases is that of familiarity. If we were to create our data sets that are utilized for teaching or learning data sets from objects or subjects that are closest, nearest, and familiar to us, we are likely to ignore the vast amount of data that could actually positively impact our AI to be a learning AI. That familiarity or similarity bias can be almost invisible to detect at first because it'll support our hypotheses. However, as the system grows and continues to grow and learn, it'll get narrower and narrower in its ability to really make positive and productive decisions.
Okay, interesting, great. So that's interesting. Aaron, how do you think about biases when it comes to developing algorithms and AI?
Yeah, so the thing to understand about machine learning based algorithms instead of sort of old-fashioned hand-coded algorithms is that they are derived from data. They're derived from relentlessly optimizing some myopic objective function. And the result is that it's extremely hard to predict what they're going to do, except that they're probably going to be pretty good as measured by your objective function. And so the thing to understand about things like racial or gender bias in machine learning is that it is not sufficient that your developers and scientists themselves aren't racist or sexist, right? That's necessary, but it's not sufficient, because all of the sort of high profile examples of racial or gender bias in machine learning that we've seen over the last few years have really been unanticipated side effects of optimization, not intentionally coded in. And it's because machine learning typically optimizes for some kind of average error. And by default, majority populations contribute more to average error measures than minority populations. And so the thing to understand is that these biases that will sort of these biases will creep in unless you explicitly look for them and do something actively to prevent them.
Interesting. Rachel, in your video, you talked about instances of lack of accountability and control. Can you give me some examples?
Absolutely. And I think stemming from what Aaron and Tej had shared, ultimately it's the conscious or unconscious biases, it's the data that we feed the algorithms with, and it's our programming skills that ultimately lead to sometimes these AI machines executing not to the way that we had intended. Some of the most obvious examples are incorrect diagnosis and treatment. So improperly diagnosing an illness, who is ultimately responsible for that, right? That is an important question to ask, and clinicians absolutely have to, we'll get into some of the implications, be aware of that. And some of the additional considerations for that is that doctors make mistakes. Sometimes they make incorrect diagnosis and sometimes they don't treat correctly. But the impact is usually limited to one or two or fewer humans. When AI makes mistake, much larger population is affected and could be subject to those issues.
Okay, interesting.
Alan, if I may, I think
please.
Aaron raised a very interesting point there, in that when a majority data set starts to tend toward an average, that average speaks to that narrow sliver. So if we were to look at the entire data set that could be total addressable data set for an AI, if we just looked at the majority and trended toward a sliver of that pie, the decision engine is in that sliver of the pie, and therefore more likely to be wrong than right.
Right. Interesting. So Tej, from a financial services perspective, what is Principal doing to address ethics in AI?
So as I had mentioned in my prior remarks, we take ethics and AI seriously at a holistic as well as an individual level. So we go through routine instruction on what these biases are and how biases affect our everyday decisions, including those made by technologists. So first and foremost, we keep it front and center for ourselves. Second, we make it okay for anybody to challenge the presence of such a bias. By creating a safe space to challenge, we're able to better create the algorithms that try and prevent such biases. Financial algorithms are not that different from those utilized in other disciplines. They just happen to look at a sliver of data set that's based on securities or personal financials or just the markets.
Okay, thanks. So Rachel, a question for you. So Everything Benefits uses AI in its solutions. What are the key ethical issues you're paying attention to in the healthcare and benefits area?
Ellen, some of the questions that are front and center on our mind is the data that is being used to feed those AI algorithms. As we operate today, the data that is used is generally pretty fragmented. It's fragmented based on the sources where it's coming from. It's subject to different regulations within United States and across the world. As such, the data that is being fed to a lot of those AI algorithms may not be complete. It may be by definition biased. And so decisions that are going to be made based on that data are something that we have to be aware of. And I'll give you one little example. For example, it might be easier for a hospital in a more affluent area to share its clinical data for the AI engines than it is for a hospital a system that is located in an economic area under duress. So when AI engine starts to process that data, it is going to be biased and it is not going to properly accommodate for variety in the patient populations and their needs. And so data really is paramount factor to take into account when dealing with AI.
Right. Interesting. So Aaron, back to you. You have literally written the book on the subject. From a development perspective, how best can developers ensure that they're embedding social values and other ethical considerations in the design of algorithms and AI?
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, my colleague Michael Kearns and I wrote this book, The Ethical Algorithm, in which we talk about this at length. But I'd say the 30-second soundbite is that the first thing to realize is that sort of the most obvious naive solutions don't work and can actually be counterproductive. So for example, if you want to eliminate racial or gender bias, a natural thing to try is to remove racial and gender data, or maybe not even collect it. Well, not only does that not work, it can actually make things worse. Similarly, giving sensitivity training to your developers really isn't getting at the real algorithmic issue. And so the thing you need to do instead is think carefully about what behaviors you do not want your algorithms to exhibit. You have to think about them with mathematical precision, because machine learning training is ultimately a mathematical procedure. And you have to embed those constraints into the design process of the algorithm. And there's a big, both sort of scientific and technical literature on this, and there's tools out there to help you. The thing really to realize is that there's a problem to be solved, and it's not easy.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I think we're just about out of time. I want to thank the panelists for a great discussion. You guys each bring really interesting perspective, and I appreciate it. And I also want to thank our audience for watching. Hope everybody can have a great weekend and take care.
Think about things I wish I could be doing now. It really, one would be travel. I'd love to be able to travel with my family again. I'd love to be able to go out to dinner and restaurants, and I'd love to really get together in much larger groups than we can. I miss all of the larger get-togethers with friends and family that we always have.
Pie.
Cake.
City.
Ocean.
Mountains.
Hawaii.
Alaska.
Climbing some mountains and relaxing, if I had my choice.
Came immediately to my mind was the time that we and a few folks from Ben Franklin and PACT closed down the PHL Innovation Picnic at some ridiculous hour after it ended.
Which time are you referring to?
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
How could I forget? So my wife and I had just recently been married, and we had our firstborn son, Casey, and we were watching the game, and he was in bed, and we had to be very quiet when the Phillies finally clinched with that last out with Brad Lidge getting the strikeout. We were like, because we didn't want to wake up our son who was a newborn.
So I think if I could choose what I wanted to be when I grow up, I think I'd have to grow up to be a race car driver. Mike, what would you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah, it's funny. I think there's some videos of me as a kid saying I wanted to work at McDonald's when I grew up. I think it was because I thought the McDonald's employees got the Happy Meal toys for free, and that seemed to be the dream.
For a final session of this year's Forum Conference, our steering committee wanted to address an issue that has become increasingly urgent. Racial and gender disparities across the national technology workforce are stark, despite there being clear evidence that a more diverse and inclusive workforce provides companies with a competitive edge. For enterprise executives, lack of a clear, well-executed DEI strategy means losing out on great ideas and talented people. Our next panel will tell us how they're putting inclusive ideals into action, building a stronger and more diverse workforce of the future in the process.
Hey, good morning. My name is Carly Quinn. I am the Global Head of Value Experience for SAP, and I'm honored to be here today to moderate this great discussion between Dennis and Jason. And I'll pass it over to you just real quickly to do a quick little intro.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the invite. My name is Dennis Kennedy. I am the chair of the National Diversity Council.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here. My name is Jason Mills. I'm Director of Custom Engineering for the Cloud Division of Google.
Well, welcome everyone, and I'm really looking forward to this critical topic that we have in front of us today. So, you know, we all know that fostering a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment not only encourages a sense of belonging, but it improves financial performance. And so I'm grateful to have both of you here today. And I know we've got limited time, so I'm just going to jump right in with my first question for you. So when it comes to diversity and inclusion, why is the tech industry behind the eight ball?
Well, I'll start off, and I think we have to look at from a historical standpoint. You know, when we look at our history, workplace history in which certain groups were not allowed to have certain specific jobs. And when you look at certain specific industries, you'll see as white male dominated. The tech industry is no different. Unfortunately, it has not taken full advantage of the multicultural workplace that we have now. America is not the America of 1933. We are very much a multicultural community. And one of the challenges is seeing real value in differences. And I think, you know, when you hear the CEO of Wells Fargo that says there's not enough African-American talent, that is a myth. That is not the truth. There is a lot of very talented women, brown people, and African-Americans that are very talented and could be a great addition to any organization's team. Jason?
Great, thank you, Dennis. And Jason, any thoughts from you on that?
Yeah, I agree with Dennis in terms of the historical legacy of technology. I'll add that the monolithic view and the way technology has been developed all the way from invention to funding has generally been supported through a single community, white male dominated. And so women and people of color were often not included in that growth. I think we're now seeing a transition where the realization is that the world has changed and the importance of diversity is paramount to the success of any technology company. So I think that the approach now is to make sure that we widen the net to understand, you know, how do we get more people of color, specifically Black leaders, involved in strategic decisions as well as leadership roles so that they can provide mentorship and guidance to others who may want to come into the industry. So at Google, I think there's been a lot of efforts made, and some have not succeeded as much as possible, but we're definitely dedicated to ongoing connections and involvement and growth for the Black Plus community at Google.
That's great, and thanks for sharing those perspectives. So, you know, based on, you know, some of what both of you just shared, you know, why do you think that, you know, some of the diversity and inclusion, and now we're even seeing equity, right, being brought into that whole equation, you know, why do these initiatives tend to fail?
Jason, do you want to start?
Yeah, let me kind of chime in here. So failure is you know, relative word depending on each organization's objectives, right? So at Google, one of our key objectives is to provide a representative objective to have talent across all diverse communities that's representative of our broader society. And so as we started publishing our numbers 2 years ago, I think it's been apparent that there has been lots of efforts and lots of focus, but not a lot of success. And so what we've tried to do is rethink our approach and involve a lot more third-party organizations, a lot more employee resource groups to brainstorm on the right approach and advise our leadership at the C-level on the best way to proceed. Unfortunately, given the time that we're living in, it has made that challenge even harder, given our pandemic and quarantine. But above and beyond, how do we empower leaders to have an outreach process where we can influence the ability to recruit top talent? So I would say that within the tech industry writ large, there are similar programs in play. But I know that at Google, we're taking this extremely seriously. In fact, our CEO, Sundar Pichai, has announced a commitment, 5.6 point commitment to the Black community to make sure that we have diversity, equity, and inclusion at all levels of our organization, as well as across inclusive products that we build for the world. So I'm very optimistic, but we have a lot of work to do ahead of us, and we just have to keep the pressure on.
And I'll add that, like all organizations, it starts with the CEO. The CEO has to be the champion for diversity, equity, and inclusion internally. The CEO should be wearing the Chief Diversity Officer hat every day and championing this cause. And, you don't know what you don't know. And unfortunately, a lot of CEOs lack the knowledge of why DE&I is important internally for their organization and how that ties back to the bottom line. And so I will say that failure is because of the lack of commitment from the CEO. It starts at the very top. If the CEO is the leader and he leads. And I always say the statement, the lack of inclusion equals the lack of leadership. And so that's pretty much what we're seeing is the lack of leadership.
Yeah, great, Dennis. And, I think, both of you brought up a couple of really great points. And where we do see successful outcomes, right, it's because this, thought and these belief system, right, is really ingrained in the fabric of the culture and of the organization and the communities of which that they're part of. So, Jason, one of the things that you mentioned too was really looking at a number of activities, right? Passions in the right place, good intention, right? But often not seeing the outcomes that were desired. And so as you think about the future and, diversity, equity, and inclusion, what would success look like for the tech industry? And what are some of the ideas that if people are listening to us today, what are some maybe actionable things that they can do and start to make a difference in their organization?
Yeah, so success, we've actually defined that in our Building Sustainable Equity, as I recently announced. And so success for us is a 30% growth in Black leadership at a senior level within the next 5 years. And that is a journey that we're all going. I represent part of that leadership. And all of us at the leadership level are truly committed to that goal. So we've laid out very specific goals within the organization and within the community. And those shared goals were not just done in a vacuum. Right? And I think that's the difference between past efforts and current efforts. Right? Past, it was pretty much a top-down kind of how do we think we can do it. This time, it's very much a bottoms-up. We're listening to the community more. We're getting more feedback from our employee resource groups on the right strategy. We have people at all levels able to sit down and confront our CEO in a very open and direct forum to state how they're feeling, what they're going through in society and in the organization, and what things could and must be done to change the Black experience at our organization, and also how the organization can influence the community that it works in. Google is located in many metropolitan cities in the US and has an impact into the local community. And that impact should be felt in a positive way. And so programs like Grow with Google are free technology training programs for local communities. All can consume, but we really push for the Black community and underrepresented populations to get that training at no charge, right? Things like that, Google has the power to do. And I would argue many large technology organizations have that similar power. They just have to have the commitment, right? That commitment that we spoke about is pinnacle at the C level. It must happen from the top down in terms of that commitment to budget, commitment to execution, commitment to results, and measuring those results very much like we measure our bottom line and our revenue, to measure the results of our impact in a positive way on the communities and the people that we serve.
That's great. And Dennis, any closing thoughts for you on that? What are you?
Yeah, hey, I think a lot of what Jason said is right on. Organizations have to move from a monolithic culture, which dominated by one group, and transform that culture into an inclusive culture in which they value talent from all shades, right? We know that the color of your skin doesn't determine, or your gender doesn't determine how talented that you are. And so a lot of organizations have to tear down barriers to inclusion, starting at the very top, starting in the boardroom. If you don't have diversity in the boardroom, you're not going to have diversity valued anywhere else in the organization. And when we look at the numbers of diversity in our boardrooms, it does not reflect the diversity of our society today. So I encourage organizations, whether you're in the tech industry or not, to start right there in the boardroom and have those conversations on why D&I, why inclusion and education is so important. You don't know what you don't know. And I think a lot of organizations, leaders don't know, and they haven't been through the necessary training to gain the knowledge in order to lead. Because if you don't have, if you don't have knowledge, you can't lead. And so back to what Jason said about measurement, I think that's essential. I think what Google's doing is excellent, and I commend their efforts and Jason for his leadership there at Google.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Well, thank you both so much. Really appreciate the time with you today. Thank you for what you're doing, what you stand for, and your passion. And I know that together, as we come together, we can make it happen. So thanks again so much. Really appreciate your time.
I'm Terry Kerwin, a partner at the law firm of Fox Rothschild. We're a proud sponsor of PACT and the Forum Conference and have significant experience in representing clients in the technology space, including with respect to data privacy and security, IP protection, commercialization, financing, and sale events. Since we pivoted the Forum Conference to an online series in June, we've presented nearly 10 hours of content on the digital transformation of the enterprise. To recap these past few months of live and on-demand sessions, let's go now to Peter Coffey, Forum mainstay and Vice President of Strategic Innovation at Salesforce, who's live in our virtual green room with his final thoughts on the themes of the 2020 Forum Conference.
Good day, and thanks to all of you for being part of our reimagined Forum for 2020. I'm privileged to have this chance to offer some closing comments after being allowed to open with some thoughts on technology trends. I mentioned in my opening talk the comment of Tomomi Ito at Nokia, who said that hyper success happens when there are 3 or more technology inflections at around the same time. And I talked during those remarks about the combination of 5G globally distributed computation fabrics, massive cloud capacity for data collection and compilation, and the use of AI-derived technologies to generate insight and recommendations so we could create personalization and scale. Well, I'd like to offer now as we close some observations on a different trio of inflection points: the understanding of human intent, the recognition of multi-decade phenomena, and the opportunity to deliver products and services at the far ends of the long tails in markets of health, finance, manufacturing, education, and many other areas that matter to all of us. Let me start with some thoughts on the long tail. It's been about 16 years since Chris Anderson wrote an article with that title for Wired magazine, later expanded to a book, in which he said that the future of entertainment is in the millions of niche markets at the shallow end of the bit stream. And he talked about the ability of Amazon recommendations, for example, to connect customers with book products such as books that were rarely found on bookstore shelves, or movies that might have only appeared in a tiny number of specialty theaters. During this year's forum, we saw that entertainment was just the beginning. For example, we heard from Alternative Investment Exchange about their platform that offers the mass market convenience of vehicles like mutual funds for investor access to a wide range of alternatives that are less widely traded and have long been less welcoming to retail investors. Similarly, we saw platform efficiencies being brought by Cassian to the relatively small volume but critically important healthcare sector of patient management in specialty therapies. As Chris Anderson invited us to imagine, think about a movie marquee proclaiming every movie ever made. We take that almost for granted now with our many streaming video services, but now we can see this coming to many other crucial areas of our lives. We can make the long tail of choice, which might become overwhelming, more useful when we can tailor recommendations based on better understanding of what people actually want. And we see movement in this direction from forum participants like Ike AI, which furthers a pursuit of understanding people that's been a goal of AI researchers since the 1960s. People figured out even then that a lot of what seems like intelligence comes from knowing more about a person's context and past behavior, which are both among the things that a 5G world can give us. Doing this requires us to navigate three, and there's that number again, of our four major themes of this year's forum: ubiquitous connectivity, the balance of personalization with privacy, and the ethical application of the power of AI. I hope you found those parts of the program to be valuable in that regard. Finally, it would be malpractice for me to end these remarks without observing that the things we've done with technology up until now are just a rehearsal for the challenges of realigning entire industries around new modes of energy production, new models of agriculture, and new ways of doing the most common tasks of life to address the realities of climate change. We owe a far-sighted response to these demands, both to the younger generations of our 5-generation workplace and to the underrepresented groups of society who have not been fully invited to participate in its positive outcomes. The fourth, and by no means least important, of this year's forum themes. When we get together again next year, I hope that we'll have seen useful progress in bringing the energy and the intellect of the forum community and other technology leaders to these frontiers of innovation. I'm Peter Coffey with Salesforce. Thank you very much.
Last week, you watched pitches from our 8 incredible demo pit companies. And thank you for your Mentimeter votes. Our judges used your input in their process. Now we're just minutes away from announcing this year's Best in Show winner. But first, we want to give you some background on the Forum Demo Pit and insight into the selection and judging process. We continue to be so impressed with the quality of the Demo Pit companies each year and the innovation coming out of our community. Since our first Forum conference 7 years ago, Best in Show winners have gone on to raise more than $50 million in capital, with 3 of the 7 successfully completing exits to strategic acquirers. Here with me now in our virtual green room are 2 of this year's Demo Pit judges, Jennifer Ciotti, Program Manager, and Russ Kleiman, Global Leader at SEI Ventures. Welcome. Jennifer, can you give our audience some insight into this year's selection and judging process?
Sure, Dean. This year we received 60 applications for our 8 presentation slots. Nominations came in from across the PACT community, from trusted PACT partners, and members of our steering committee. Our judges panel, made up of enterprise tech leaders, investors, and experienced entrepreneurs, met following last week's program. We reviewed the recorded presentations and the company slide decks, as well as company profiles in the PACT mobile app. We even considered the live audience poll rankings, close to 100 responses from last week's broadcasts.
Russ, can you tell us about the criteria the judges used to select the Best in Show winner?
Of course, yeah, I can go over the 4 different evaluation criteria. First and foremost, we looked at the strength of the products and the attractiveness to enterprise buyers. Does it really address a core pain point for the enterprise or address an unmet need? And is the solution clear with meaningful innovation and differentiation? The second criteria is investability. Is it a strong management team? Is there a large total addressable market? And is there signs confirming a really solid product market fit? Equally, we looked at the alignment with the forum themes themselves. We wanted to make sure that there was consistency across the evaluation process. And then lastly, from the presentation, were the firms able to tell their story in a way that connects with the audience in a compelling way? Can they describe the problem that they're trying to solve or the unmet need? And can they connect and show how that solution supports those unmet needs in a clear and compelling way? At the same time, we also took polling from the audience as an additional input, just to make sure that we're not missing opportunities or not seeing things through our own lens, but taking outside influences as well. So overall, this was really a compelling group and a compelling opportunity to look at different startups and different founding teams, all doing unique things within their respective industries that they're looking to solve. And the decision process was quite hard. And we had many conversations around the two contenders that really were the final contenders for the opportunity to win the prize.
Jennifer and Russ, yeah, it is exciting every year to see the demo pit companies. I know we start with an incredible number of them come down through the judging process to the final 8. We're getting close to announcing the winner. I want to take us back, though, as to why the demo pit matters, why people should pay attention. And actually, I don't have to go too far back. I'll go to 2017 Phorum that occurred back in April of 2017. There are 2 companies of note, certainly others, but 2 companies of real note in that class. One was Fishtown Analytics. And Fishtown Analytics is a company that grew from that point and earlier this year raised close to a $13 million round from Andreessen Horowitz, one of the famed Silicon Valley and global venture firms in the world. And the second was a company that wasn't even on our radar. It was called DiviCloud, but it caught someone's attention. And that someone was George Krutzel, one of the general partners with Mission OG, a venture firm focused in enterprise technology here in Philadelphia. He actually met with Ben Johnson in the hall at Phorum, and it was clear to him right at that moment that they were addressing a real problem. He tracked them, he invested in them. In October of that year, put a second round in 2 years later. They just sold them to a public company earlier this year for $150 million. How about that?
Wow. Dean, I think this just really speaks to the power of events like Phorum and the Demo Pit specifically. The Demo Pit has always been just an exciting part of PACT's Phorum program that we look forward to every year. As a corporate venture capital investor, we're always so eager to see the pitches, to discover what new disruptive ideas are arising in the Philadelphia community and beyond the Philadelphia area actually as well, and hear directly from the innovative founders leading those businesses.
Yeah, at the same time, as Jennifer speaks from a CVC perspective, certainly the story that you call out from just a venture capital world and the opportunities that are presented when somebody's applying and demoing within the demo pit, what that foreshadows and the opportunities are significant. The VC community is incredibly networked and incredibly connected. And with the Philadelphia, community really reaching out and extending the opportunities for these types of firms in the demo pit to really drive ultimate success.
Who's going to be the next DiviCloud or Fishtown Analytics? I'm not sure. We'll find out who the winner is just shortly. But I'm excited to see, and I'm sure there are going to be success stories coming out of this year's Phorum. So I can't wait to see.
Absolutely.
Same with us.
Hi, I'm Grace. PulseDive is a cybersecurity threat intelligence startup focused on helping communities and organizations proactively improve their security posture.
I'm Dan Lamott, and I came here today to tell you a story. 10 years ago, I co-founded a nonprofit fundraising platform that set the standard for digital fundraising in the cloud.
Boodle has built a people-focused predictive analytics platform for business-to-consumer businesses. Sales teams are not data scientists, they're not machine learning experts. They're very good at selling. Boodle AI gives them the power to take their time and focus on what they're good at and not get mired down in data.
AIX is the only enterprise technology platform for alternative investments, and we're empowering growth for the broader industry.
My name is Sanjay Kobragade, and I'm the founder and CEO of Neura Health, making medical imaging accessible to the world population.
Hello, my name is Joe Rochar, and I'm the inventor of Ike, a personal digital assistant based on natural language artificial intelligence that is superior to any artificial intelligence natural language processor on the market, because we can understand human intent.
Cassian is a SaaS digital health company that improves patient compliance to specialty therapies through our engagement engine, Flex.
Hello, my name is Sean Boyce. I'm the CEO and founder of StaffGeek. StaffGeek is a human resources technology company, and we offer products and people analytics.
My name is Sean Dowling with Osage Venture Partners, and on behalf of PACT and Phorum, I would like to thank all of our demo pit companies for their hard work, for making the trip to our studio to record your pitches, and for making this year's Phorum demo pit our strongest yet. From a pool of more than 65 applicants, we narrowed the group down to this impressive set of companies that are building innovative solutions to support the digital transformation of the enterprise. Those companies are AIX.
Hello.
Boodle AI.
Hi.
Cassian Solutions. Ike AI.
Hello.
Neura Health. Pulse Dive.
Hey.
StaffGeek.
Hello.
And Threshold.world.
Hey there.
I would also like to acknowledge the judges that met following all of the pitches to determine our 2020 winner. Jennifer Ciotti and Russ Kleiman of SEI Ventures, Dan Koval of Bentley Systems, Bob Mowell of Circonis, and Bharat Santanaman of New Spring Capital. Before we get to our big announcement, I want to give a special shout out to our audience favorite. We received over 100 votes during the broadcast, so thanks to everyone for your participation. And the company that received the highest average rating in our live audience poll was StaffGeek. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
For our best in show, we had a narrow margin between our judges' top two companies, AIX and Boodle AI. In the end, the company selected as best in show and winner of the 2020 Phorum Forward Award is, I would drumroll if I could, but it is Boodle AI. Congratulations to Boodle AI and CEO Sean Olds.
Thank you very much. My co-founder and I, France, are absolutely humbled. I've been in the startup world for about 20 years now and have done many pitch competitions. And honestly, this is one of the best collections of companies I've seen as far as maturity and diversity in what they're doing. So I'm truly humbled.
Yeah, well, thank you to everyone for your participation. As Sean just said, this is one of the strongest set of companies we've ever had at Phorum, and we're sure that all of you will go on to create great enterprise solutions, and congratulations to you all.
Congratulations to our Demo Pit Best in Show winner, and to all of this year's presenting companies. This concludes the 2020 Phorum Conference Series. Thanks to all of you who have been with us over the past few months of our Phorum Conference Series. And remember, you can go back and watch any past Phorum content, as well as connect with fellow attendees, speakers, as well as demo pit and showcase companies in our Phorum community app and desktop platform. Check your email or reach out directly to Danielle Pinto from our PACT team via the PACT website for information on how to access. I'd once again like to recognize our Phorum presenting sponsors, Fairmount Partners and Anexinet, for their leadership through this unique planning challenge, and our conference chair, Sanjay Sharma of SEI, for his guidance. Thank you to all of our Phorum sponsors, and to you, our audience and Phorum community, for your engagement and your participation and thoughtful questions throughout our live events. Remember to join us immediately following this broadcast in our virtual green room via the link in the YouTube chat. I'll see you there and look forward to seeing you at next year's Phorum Conference. Thank you.